Hi, I'm David Cloninger, and this is Josh Kendall of the State Newspaper and GoGamecocks.com, welcoming you to part 2 of our season preview for South Carolina football. Josh, we talked last time about the quarterbacks. There's a lot of new faces there, really inexperienced faces, but the one biggest new face on this team, defensive coordinator Jon Hoke. We have had some questions about this, so let's be real clear. While Lorenzo Whammy Ward is listed as co-defensive coordinator, Jon Hoke is in charge. Right. Jon is calling all the plays, and with Jon Hoke in town, a former NFL guy, former guy under Spurrier, Florida, what's been the biggest changes that he's instituted so far?
I mean, I don't expect fans to notice dramatic changes. What I expect fans to notice, if anything, is it just kind of looks the same every snap. Last year, South Carolina experimented with the 3-4. It didn't work well. They bounced back in the 4-3. Jon Hoke got here and said, this is what we do. This is what he's done in the NFL for 13 years. It's the cover 2, Tampa 2, whatever you want to call it. They're going to play 4 down linemen. They're going to play 3 linebackers most of the time against traditional offenses. If it's a spread, they'll open up in what we've all called a 4-2-5 for years, because that's what South Carolina has called it. Yeah. Jon Hoke has kind of scoffed at that and said it's just nickel defense. So they'll play nickel defense and they'll play the traditional 4-3, and that's about it. And they'll try to do all the little things right, which I think this defense got away from last year. They just sort of got it got into their heads. They weren't doing anything right. They weren't tackling well. So Jon Hoke, I think, has brought a very basic approach. It's not like the NFL guy coming around and reinventing football. Sure. They're going to run a 4-3. They're going to run zone blitzes because that's what the Tampa 2 does. But they're not going to be overly aggressive, I don't think. They want to play base defense, make sure they hit all of their assignments, and do it every time, which I think if you're a South Carolina fan, you see that this year, you'll be tickled with that.
Hey, Josh, you were covering the scheme, and you mentioned the 3-4, and that was really the biggest problem with last year. They spent all spring, all summer repping on the 3-4. That was going to be the base. You come out in the first half against Texas A&M, and the Aggies just run right through it. Well, now you're all screwed up. So you start going more to 4-3. You start switching back and forth. Nobody knows what's going on, and I think that just had the snowball effect. No so question. Jon Hoke, what you're saying, he's coming in and saying, guys, this is the base. 4-3, we're going to run a lot of nickel, we're going to run a lot of base, zone blitz, and that's going to be it, and no one's going to change. Now, with the scheme, I think there's also been kind of a change in attitude with the defense. One, they are all on the same page now. Again, they all know what they're going to do. If nothing else works, stay in that same basic formation. But Jon Hoke is basically preaching 2 principles: rush, cover. Rush, cover. Got to get to the quarterback. You got to hit him, which is something that was in very short supply last year. And you just got to stick with your man. And, of course, one feeds off the other. I personally think that had the pass rush been just a little more effective last year, the secondary wouldn't have gotten as beat up as it did. You just can't cover a guy forever. You can't be running around out there forever. So he's come in with a new scheme, and he's also said, guys, you just got to have that rush and cover, keep that philosophy. And with the new faces involved, I think there's a lot more, what's the word, maybe energy, enthusiasm. It's a fresh slate.
They just feel like they're going to be able to get it done this year. And that group had no confidence at the end of last season.
I mean, it was just kind of the here we go again phenomenon, especially against that Tennessee game, and really even in the bowl game before they kind of held up. And so it's, of course, trying to just erase and wipe the slate clean from last year. It was just a bad defense. Jon Hoke has come in to fix that, and we'll just have to see how it happens, because they sure get an aggressive first test on September the 3rd.
That's what I was going to say. You'll know early. North Carolina brings 9 returning offensive starters to Bank of America Stadium. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next to talk about the biggest part of Jon Hoke's defense, the defensive line.